I escaped with my Mafia prince. Chapter 2. Elena stands on the balcony of a secluded villa that overlooks the verdant forests outside Rio de Janeiro. The aroma of salt and greenery mingles in the air, carrying with it a sense of new beginnings. After so many nights filled with fear in New York, she finds the rhythmic pulse of Brazil a welcome contrast. The lush landscape and the gentle crash of distant waves hold a promise. Maybe here, hidden from her father's ruthless gaze, she and Adrian can finally build a life, free from the past. Adrian steps out onto the balcony and stands behind her, his presence both comforting and protective. She senses him before he speaks. His hand rests on her shoulder. He says nothing at first, simply looks out at the horizon. She can feel the tension in his body, the ever-present concern that they have not truly escaped the shadows of their old life. He's made this villa feel like a fortress, choosing it for its seclusion and the tall perimeter walls hidden behind flowering vines. Still, some part of him remains on alert, braced for the inevitable threat that could appear at any moment. They have spent their first few weeks exploring the local markets in a cautious but excited manner, soaking in the music that spills through the streets at dawn and late into the night. Elena has fallen in love with the vibrant colors of Brazilian culture, the way it embraces joy and life, in stark contrast to the gray formality of her upbringing. She wears bright sundresses and loose-fitting sandals, feeling more comfortable and alive than she did in her father's guarded mansion. Adrian notices how her laughter comes more easily here, how her eyes gleam with curiosity whenever she discovers something new. In the evenings, they walk along the nearby stretch of quiet beach, hand in hand, talking about their hopes and fears. She tells him about her dream of doing something that belongs solely to her. She wants to be more than the commissioner's daughter or the secret girlfriend of a mafia prince. Sometimes she admits to feeling guilty that she left everything behind so abruptly. He listens without judgment, gently reminding her why she had no other choice. They talk about the future in hushed voices, aware that any dream can shatter if her father's wrath reaches these shores. That wrath lingers in the background like a looming storm. Commissioner Raymond Calloway is not a man who accepts defeat. In New York, he has been humiliated, his political influence threatened. He promised to marry off his daughter to a respectable family, only to have her stolen away by Adrian Moretti. Rumors swirl in high circles that Raymond is determined to hunt them down, his pride too wounded to relent. Unknown to Elena and Adrian, covert agents have already been dispatched to Brazil, financed by Raymond's bottomless resources and motivated by his relentless desire for control. As days turn into weeks, Elena dives into her newfound independence. She rents a small commercial space in a colorful part of the city, a modest but promising spot that used to be a cafe. The moment she sees the sunlit interior, she envisions turning it into a boutique filled with vibrant fabrics, handcrafted accessories, and unique pieces she sources from local artisans. It becomes a passion project that energizes her. Adrian supports her, though he does so with visible caution, reminding her to keep a low profile. She promises she will, but the glow in her eyes when she talks about the boutique hints that this might be the first time in her life she's felt truly free to chase her own dreams. While Elena immerses herself in the boutique's preparations, Adrian devotes his time to solidifying their security. He meets local contacts and carefully chooses whom to trust. Some are small-scale operators, smugglers, familiar with the less-traveled routes and hidden enclaves in the region. Others are men with far darker reputations, individuals who can supply false documentation or offer muscle if the need arises. Adrian's father had connections that reached beyond New York's borders, though Adrian never fully knew just how far they extended. Now he sees signs that some of those old networks have a presence here. He walks a tightrope between using that familiarity for their protection and avoiding any alliances that would drag Elena into deeper danger. Elena's boutique soon opens its doors under a simple, elegant name that references the bright, kaleidoscopic palette of Brazilian festivals. She invests herself wholeheartedly, painting the interior with warm colors, arranging garments and artisanal jewelry with a meticulous eye for detail. Locals are charmed by her sincerity and the novelty of an outsider embracing their culture. Tourists wander in, enticed by the brightness of the displays and the friendly face behind the counter. Day by day, her confidence grows. She is no longer just a fugitive from her old life. She is carving out a place for herself in this new world, on her own terms. During the boutique's slow hours, she reads about festivals in various parts of Brazil and plans trips she hopes to take with Adrian someday. She dreams of attending the famous celebrations in Salvador or the colorful parades in Recife. She pictures them dancing amid crowds of vibrant costumes, hearts pounding to the beat of drums. Adrian teases her gently, pretending to be reluctant, but the warmth in his eyes reveals that he's happy to see her so full of life. Yet danger begins to creep in quietly. One evening, after Elena closes the shop, a man appears in the doorway. He has an unsettling air about him, dressed in clothes that hint at wealth, but with eyes that linger too long on her surroundings. He praises her boutique, comments on how unusual it is for a newcomer to set up shop here. She forces a polite smile, her heart fluttering with unease. There is something in his manner that reminds her of the criminals she once saw, lurking around her father's precinct, the kind of men who thrive in secrecy. She thanks him for visiting and quickly locks up, all her senses on high alert as she hurries to the safety of Adrian's waiting car. Adrian notices the tension in her face as she slides into the passenger seat, and she tells him about the stranger. He tenses, but tries to reassure her. His instincts say this might be a small-time extortionist who sees a foreigner's business as a target. He vows to increase security, to look into who this man is and why he might be interested in her store. She suggests maybe she should close the shop until things feel safer. But he shakes his head, gently placing a hand on hers. He doesn't want her to live in fear again, caged by threats. Instead, he insists they be proactive. She nods, trusting his protective nature, even if a sliver of worry lodges in her mind. A week later, Elena attends a local festival near her neighborhood. Colors swirl in the streets, loud music reverberates, and the air is thick with the scent of grilled meats and sweet pastries. She feels weightless in the carnival atmosphere. Adrian stands by her side, more guarded but trying to relax. They dance to samba rhythms, losing themselves in the crowd's exhilarating energy. For a moment, it's easy to forget the threats lurking behind every corner. She laughs when Adrian spins her under a canopy of string lights and they kiss beneath the glow, ignoring the stares of curious onlookers. She loves this side of him, less haunted, more open to the possibilities of a new life. But even in this crowd there are eyes watching. Men in plain clothes, seemingly just other festival-goers, linger on the periphery. They communicate with subtle gestures, ensuring they remain hidden in the throng. One of them, a tall figure with a stern gaze, snaps a photo of the couple with a discreet camera phone, capturing Elena's radiant smile next to Adrian's protective stance. He sends the image to an encrypted number in New York, a silent message that the commissioner's daughter has been found. In the days that follow, the noose tightens. Elena's boutique starts receiving threatening notes slipped under the door at night, each warning her to cooperate or face consequences. She tells Adrian, who instructs his men to keep watch. They suspect the local criminals might be connected to the stranger who visited her earlier. Adrian grows restless, certain that her father's influence could be fueling this harassment. He arranges for an ally, a local ex-soldier with knowledge of the city's underbelly, to quietly investigate. The ex-soldier confirms that a group of men, possibly outside hires, have been asking questions about Adrian and Elena in the seedier parts of town. Adrian tries to hide the worst of the details from Elena, not wanting to scare her. But she's intuitive. She knows they can't remain naive about the threats. She sees how tense his shoulders have become, how he checks the windows and doors more often. Instead of shrinking into fear, she decides to stand firm. She refuses to run away again. Their life in Brazil is her chance at true independence, and she won't let her father's agents or local criminals rob her of that. She calls him on it one evening in their villa, confronting him about the half-truths she senses he's telling her for her own protection. "I have a right to know," she says, eyes determined. "Whatever's happening, I want to face it with you." He draws a breath, then nods. "Someone's definitely on our trail. There are signs it could be your father's doing, but there might also be local forces trying to exploit the situation. We can't let our guard down." She steps closer, placing her hands on his chest. "I won't hide. Not anymore." He pulls her into an embrace, pressing his lips to her hair. "We'll do this together, then," he murmurs. "But promise me you'll stay safe. If there's any threat, you let me know immediately." She agrees, and for the first time they plan their defense as partners, sharing intelligence and preparing for the possibility of confrontation. They arrange additional surveillance around the boutique. Adrian calls in favors from a few shady connections he's made, people who can blend into the crowd and keep an eye on Elena from a distance. The uneasy truce between his desire for her safety and her insistence on living freely becomes an undercurrent in their daily life. They argue sometimes, but they always circle back to the realization that what they have is precious, worth every risk. Late one night, as the villa sleeps under the moonlight, Adrian receives an unexpected visitor. A man in a well-tailored suit, hair graying at the temples, stands at the gates, introducing himself as someone who once worked with Adrian's father. Adrian allows him inside with caution. In the dimly lit study, the man reveals that Adrian's father had long-standing ties to a powerful figure in Brazil's underworld. He produces evidence of ongoing business deals, a chain of money and smuggled goods that continues even after Adrian's father's death. Adrian initially feels skeptical. He had believed his father's empire was primarily centered in New York. But the records and ledgers the man shows him paint a broader, more insidious network. Adrian is unsettled to learn that part of this network might be providing muscle to foreign entities, including law enforcement officials open to bribes. It dawns on him that if his father's name still wields power here, someone could be using it to find him or to manipulate local gangs into working with Commissioner Calloway. The man hints that Adrian could either claim leadership over these lingering ties or let them fall into enemy hands. The implications are daunting. To keep Elena safe, Adrian might have to assert some control over a criminal web he never wanted to inherit. If he doesn't, those resources could be turned against him and the woman he loves. He escorts the man out politely, but his mind churns long after the gates close. When Elena asks about the visitor, he hesitates, then tells her the truth. She listens quietly, struggling with the realization that, even here, the Moretti name carries dangerous weight. He expects her to be angry or frightened, but she surprises him with her resolve. She sees that they may have no choice but to confront these shadows head-on. Running again would mean a lifetime of never settling, never finding true peace. She holds his hand, and in her eyes he sees that shared understanding. They have to stand their ground, or they will be hunted forever. A few nights later, as she's closing up the boutique, Elena senses something amiss. The streets are oddly quiet. There's a prickling unease at the back of her neck, like someone's watching. She hastens to switch off the lights and step outside, scanning the empty road. Footsteps echo behind her. Before she can react, a van screeches around the corner, headlights piercing the darkness. T-woman jump out, rushing toward her. She screams Adrian's name instinctively, even though he's not there. Her heart pounds wildly as she tries to break free, but a hand clamps over her mouth. She struggles, panic surging through her veins, her mind racing with the realization that these men are here for her. An engine roars in the distance, and suddenly a car swerves onto the street. Headlights flare, momentarily blinding the kidnappers. Two of Adrian's hired watchers leap out. Gunfire erupts, deafening in the narrow street. Elena ducks behind a parked motorcycle, hands trembling, trying to make herself as small as possible. In the chaos, she overhears someone shouting in Portuguese, something about Raymond Calloway and a bounty. Her father has truly reached across continents to reclaim her, or at least to punish Adrian for taking her away. One of the watchers manages to subdue a kidnapper, but another tosses a smoke grenade. Thick clouds fill the air, choking Elena's lungs. She feels an arm wrap around her waist, and instinct kicks in. She stamps on a foot, elbows her assailant, and rips free. Adrenaline floods her, pushing her to fight in a way she never dared before. She hears sirens in the distance. Someone must have reported the gunshots. The kidnappers realize their window is closing. One of them tries to drag Elena again, but a bullet whizzes by, forcing him to dive for cover. In the confusion, she scrambles into the watcher's car, tears blurring her vision. She can't believe how close she came to being taken. Adrian arrives moments later, his face ashen with dread. He kneels beside the car, pulling her into a tight embrace, checking her for injuries. She clings to him, her breath ragged. They exchange no words in that instant, but the desperation in their eyes says everything. She can see the fury radiating off him, the guilt that he wasn't there sooner. For a moment, she's simply grateful to be in his arms, safe from the men who would have stolen her away into the night. The next day, Adrian escalates his defenses. He stations guards around the boutique, at the villa, and everywhere Elena goes. She finds it stifling, but given the kidnapping attempt, she can't argue that it's excessive. Still, they both know that if her father's reach extends this far, these protective measures may only buy time. Adrian grapples with the idea of using his father's old network for their benefit. He attends clandestine meetings, forging alliances with Brazilian contacts who might offer enough power to counter Raymond's influence. He hates the thought of stepping deeper into the world he once longed to escape, but sees no alternative if he wants to keep Elena safe. Meanwhile, Elena fights against the lingering terror whenever she closes the shop. She refuses to shut down her dream, believing that giving in would hand her father a victory. Though she's shaken, she channels her fear into determination. She invests more in the boutique, forging ties with local artisans who appreciate her efforts to showcase their work. She attends more festivals when she can, immersing herself in the city's lively heart, clinging to the freedom she's found. She notices how the ordeal has changed her. She's no longer the timid daughter of a commissioner who quietly complied with commands. She's begun to forge her identity under the Brazilian sun. One afternoon, while she's restocking shelves, a messenger arrives with a small envelope. Inside is a note scrawled in a familiar handwriting. "Come back, or I will leave Adrian in ruins." Her stomach twists, her pulse racing. She knows the threat isn't idle. Her father will stop at nothing to maintain control, to make sure he doesn't lose face. She contemplates hiding the note, but quickly realizes Adrian must know. She closes the shop early and goes home, bracing herself for his reaction. He reads the note, fury shadowing his features. She can almost see him wavering between wanting to confront her father directly and wanting to spirit her away again. But she refuses to run. She places her hand over his, telling him, "He wants to break us, we can't let him." Adrian nods, though he's clearly torn. They spend the evening in tense discussion, concluding that they must move forward with forging alliances. It's the only chance they have of outmaneuvering her father's resources. The tension comes to a head on a sweltering night, when one of Adrian's allies calls him with urgent news. There's going to be a direct attempt on Elena's life, orchestrated by a local gang that stands to profit from Commissioner Calloway's bounty. Adrian rushes home to gather his men, fear for Elena's safety fueling every breath. He finds her in the living room, reading a magazine and trying to ignore the anxious swirl in her gut. She sees the panic in his eyes the moment he walks in. "They're coming for you tonight," he says, voice ragged. "We have to get you out of here." She stands, shoulders squared, defiance shining through her worry. "Where? Is there anywhere safer than here?" He hesitates, then explains his plan. A small group of loyal men will create a diversion, luring the gang to a different location while Adrian and Elena slip away to a secondary hideout in the city. It's risky, but it might be their best shot at avoiding a full-on siege. She agrees, trusting him, though she can't help the dread coiling in her stomach. Every nerve thrums with tension as they pack a few essentials. Night falls and the plan is set into motion. The villa grows silent except for the hum of the insects outside. Elena clings to Adrian's hand, heart pounding as they sneak through a back gate. A faint shout in the distance signals that the diversion has begun. She squeezes Adrian's hand, her only tether to calm in the swirling darkness. They make it to a black SUV idling at the end of a hidden trail, and the driver speeds off, taking them toward the city lights. Adrian keeps his phone on speaker, listening to rapid updates from his men. The plan seems to be working. Most of the attacking force has been drawn away, but as they weave through narrow streets, headlights flare in the rearview mirror. A second vehicle follows, accelerating to close the distance. Adrian curses under his breath, telling the driver to lose them. Tires screech against asphalt, the SUV lurching around corners as Elena grips the door handle. Gunfire erupts behind them, bullets pinging off the metal exterior. They duck, hearts thundering in terror. The driver tries to maneuver through an underpass, but the pursuing car follows relentlessly. Adrian yells directions, scanning the route. Another bullet shatters the back window, letting in a rush of humid night air. Elena's pulse roars in her ears. She locks eyes with Adrian, and he gives her the faintest tight-lipped nod, as though to say he won't let them take her again. An explosion of sparks in the rear mirror indicates a tire on the pursuer's car has been hit. Their vehicle swerves, slamming into a parked truck. Adrian's SUV roars away, adrenaline rushing through every occupant. Relief floods Elena, but she knows this victory is only temporary. Her father's men, or the criminals working for him, won't give up. They reach the temporary hideout, an old apartment complex that Adrian's allies have secured for them. Once inside, he immediately starts coordinating with his men to confirm casualties, track movement, and figure out the next step. In a quiet moment, Elena finds herself in a small bedroom, staring at her reflection in a dusty mirror. She barely recognizes the woman looking back. She no longer feels like the frightened girl who once trembled at her father's threats. Her experiences in Brazil, the blossoming independence, the brush with kidnapping, the terror of chase after chase, have forged a steely resolve. She's still scared, but she's also angry. Her father's obsessive need for control has destroyed any lingering ties of filial loyalty she might have felt. Now the only thing that matters is the life she chooses with Adrian. When Adrian enters the room, she turns to him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "It won't stop unless we confront him," she says. "If we keep running, we'll never have peace." He looks conflicted, his protective instincts warring with the logic that flight has not solved their problems. He moves closer, wrapping his arms around her. "I'm done running too," he murmurs. "We stand and fight." They spend the next days mapping out a plan, forging a final alliance with the remnants of Adrian's father's network. The plan is straightforward. Use the local power base to push back against the criminals who took the bounty, effectively closing off that route. Simultaneously, gather enough leverage to force Commissioner Calloway to back down, at least temporarily. Adrian never wanted to claim his father's legacy, but he will do it now if it's the key to securing their future. Word comes that Elena's father has arrived in Brazil, or is about to, bringing along a handful of trusted men to handle matters personally. This sets the stage for a confrontation. The tension builds as Adrian arranges a meeting in a neutral location, a lavish villa owned by a powerful Brazilian contact who wants the feud resolved to maintain local stability. Elena insists on being part of it, determined to face her father head-on. The night of the meeting, they arrive with a small entourage. Elena's heart hammers as she steps through the ornate doors, recalling every humiliating moment of her father's controlling behavior. Adrian's hand tightens around hers, offering wordless support. The spacious room inside glows with chandeliers and expensive decor, but the atmosphere is heavy with menace. Men in suits line the walls, some with the sharp-eyed look of hired killers, others with the poised readiness of security professionals. At the far end, Commissioner Calloway stands tall in formal attire, flanked by men with cold, unreadable faces. Raymond's expression twists with a mix of anger, relief, and pride, battered by betrayal. Elena meets his gaze without flinching, a new sense of self-worth coursing through her. Adrian steps forward. the lines of tension in his posture revealing his own readiness for violence if necessary. A hush falls over the room, as though everyone is holding their breath, anticipating the spark that could ignite bloodshed. Raymond speaks first, his voice clipped. "You have the nerve to summon me?" Adrian's tone is steely. "You want your daughter and I want your men out of our lives. This is the only way." Raymond's glare flicks to Elena, something desperate flashing in his eyes. "Come with me, Elena. We can end this. Everything can go back to how it was meant to be." Elena steps forward, chin held high. "I'm not going anywhere with you. I'm not marrying whoever you picked. I'm not living under your thumb again." Her father's eyes narrow, disbelief warring with anger. "You think you can survive without my protection? You think the Moretti name will keep you safe?" He points an accusatory finger at Adrian. "He's dragged you into a life of crime and danger. There's no happiness for you in his world." She raises her voice, each word echoing with the courage she's found in Brazil. "It's my life, and I choose it. If you cared about my happiness, you wouldn't have tried to force me into a loveless marriage. You wouldn't have tried to kidnap me, to hunt me like prey." Raymond stands rigid, a man who has always believed in his own righteousness. When he speaks again, his voice trembles with rage. "You belong at home where you're safe. This ends here." Adrian's gaze roams over the commissioner's men, counting them. He knows his own allies wait nearby, prepared for any outcome. "You can't force her anymore," he says. "We both know you've crossed too many lines. The city you once ruled is talking, and your political allies are starting to question your actions. You can't hide what you've done to your daughter forever." A flicker of uncertainty passes over Raymond's face. He glances around, seeing that not all eyes in the room are sympathetic to him. Some are part of Adrian's network. Some belong to the local power broker who arranged this meeting. Tension coils, a hair trigger away from erupting into violence. "Let her go," Adrian presses. "You've lost. Every step you take now only exposes you more." Elena watches her father wrestle with the horrifying reality that he may be powerless to retrieve her without destroying himself. She feels a pang of sadness, recalling a time when she was too young to know his flaws, when she admired him as the ultimate protector. That illusion is gone, replaced by the knowledge of what he has done, the pain he has caused. Raymond's mouth tightens. "If I walk away now, my reputation is finished." She swallows hard. "Then maybe it's time you realized your reputation isn't worth my life." His features harden, but he doesn't move. The standoff is deafening in its silence. Finally, one of Raymond's men steps closer and murmurs in his ear. The commissioner's eyes flick to the armed guard standing behind Adrian, and then to the others in the room who remain neutral but watchful. He raises his hand, halting any further escalation. "You'll regret this," he says, voice low. "Mark my words." Adrian doesn't respond. Instead, he keeps his gaze locked on Raymond, every muscle poised for the moment a bullet might fly. Slowly, inexorably, the commissioner's men back away. Raymond's final look at Elena is a mix of fury and betrayal, but also something that might be wounded regret. The father who once dictated her every breath finally leaves, stepping out into the night with his men at his heels. In the car ride back, Elena exhales shakily, staring out the window at the neon lights dancing across the skyline. Adrian places a hand over hers, as though reminding her that she's not alone. The numbness in her chest begins to thaw, replaced by a cautious sense of relief. It isn't a clean victory. Her father could still scheme against them. But for now, at least, they have the upper hand. They have a life they can continue building. Once they reach their villa, the tension of the confrontation fades into exhausted relief. Under the moonlit sky by the backyard pool, Elena leans against Adrian, her head resting on his shoulder. They have come so far from the frightened fugitives who fled New York. Even as threats loom, they have built something meaningful here, forging connections that anchor them in this new land. She gazes at Adrian, and their eyes meet with a shared understanding of what they have survived and what they still hope to become. He lifts her chin, his voice barely above a whisper. We're free, or as close to free as we've ever been. She nods, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. I never thought I'd live a life of my own choosing, let alone one by your side. They share a tender kiss, the night air warm around them. It tastes like liberation, promises, and a love that has been tested by gunfire and betrayal. In that moment, they decide that no matter what else might come, they will face it together. The weight of her father's judgment, the ghosts of Adrian's legacy, the uncertain alliances, they are burdens they have learned to shoulder as a team. Their bond has been tempered in the flames of relentless pursuit, and now it feels unbreakable, a steel cord binding them in both vulnerability and strength. Elena closes her eyes, imagining the future they will create. She pictures continuing to grow her boutique, bridging the local art scene with new clients. She imagines waking each morning to Adrian's warmth, hearing the gentle roll of ocean waves beyond their bedroom window. She pictures them dancing at more festivals, forging friendships with neighbors who have no interest in the politics of American crime or the legacy of a disgraced commissioner. Above all, she envisions a life not defined by fear, but by the simple, extraordinary act of loving Adrian without restraint. He wraps his arms around her waist, pulling her into his lap as they dangle their feet in the warm water. You realize there's still a long road ahead, he says gently. My father's old contacts, your father's pride, we're not out of danger forever. She nods, running her fingers through his hair. I know, but I'd rather face it here, with you, than go back to New York in chains. He presses his forehead to hers, the faintest hint of a smile on his lips. Then we do it together. She kisses him again, a silent vow of loyalty and love. The moonlight shimmers on the pool's surface, casting rippling patterns over their entwined forms. In that quiet corner of Brazil, far from the looming skyscrapers of New York, two souls who once lived in the shadows find a fragile promise of hope. Their happiness is no longer stolen. It's something they've fought for, something they choose daily, despite every threat that tries to tear them apart. They remain there for a while, speaking in low murmurs about small things, about which festival they want to visit next, about the new cafe that opened down the road, about the dresses Elena wants to display in her boutique. With each word, the reality of their life together grows more tangible, more permanent. Their flight from New York's chaos was only the start of their journey. Now, in the heart of Brazil's lush landscapes and vibrant culture, they begin the next chapter, one shaped by the certainty of their love and the determination to defend it, no matter the cost.